Hey, bud. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Bad Iron Podcast. Today is Friday, the 13th. I consider that a lucky day. I think this is going to be a lucky weekend. Bad Iron does mean bad fortune, which scares me a little bit on Friday, the 13th, but do not fret. I have some good picks for you today. I don't have a lot of good stories, and I really miss my buddy Fonty. He's traveling today. He can't make it with us. I'm going to have a special guest on in a different podcast this weekend, and that's going to be pretty fun. We're going to have a few other videos that we're going to put out that are just for fun, that are big, like nice and quick. But I just want to run down some of the games this weekend. I really think there's some opportunity this weekend. I call this dog weekend. This will all be college football based today. I think there's some good opportunities to catch some Vegas and some of the people that are overreacting to some of the performances that have happened in the first couple of weeks. And so we're going to do that today, tonight, Friday the 13th. We got two games going on. Sorry, it's a little late, but I love both underdogs in the games tonight. I think all four teams playing tonight are solid. I think they can all put points on the board. I don't think any of the teams, Kansas or Kansas State, both are playing at home. I don't love their home field advantage, especially against non-conference opponents. We got UNLV coming in at Kansas. Kansas has been great the last few years, and they're still gonna be really good this year. UNLV is underrated. They can put points on the board, and they're getting 10 points at Kansas, so I'm going to take UNLV at Kansas. I don't know if it's going to be a high scoring game or a low scoring game, but I think UNLV can put up enough points to stay within that 10 points at Kansas. So we're going to go with that one first. I don't think Kansas has a really great home field advantage. And this is an opportunity for UNLV to really get on the map. Kansas, I think, maybe looking ahead to their Big 12 conference play. Likewise, Arizona +7 at Kansas State. Um, Arizona very underrated last year, and they got a lot of talent back. Um, and I think they are going to give Kansas State a game tonight. I know Kansas State has a pretty good home field advantage. Kansas State struggled last week a little bit, I think, to get by Tulane, although I do think Tulane is a really good team. I think Kansas State may be still trying to figure themselves out. So I like Arizona possibly to win this game, but I'm at least going to take the 7 points tonight with Arizona. So I got UNLV +10 and Arizona +7 tonight. Those lines are moving. So, if you need to buy, if it's 9.5 with Kansas versus UNLV, I'd buy the half point. That 10 points makes a difference over 9.5. Every half point matters. We've said that many times here on the Bad Iron podcast. So that's my two first quick picks. Last week, we had a pretty good week. I went over some of those where we had Kentucky under, we had Tennessee blowing out NC State. A few other ones that if you go back and listen to, I'm not going to brag on them. But we had a bunch of big wins that were no doubters. So hopefully we can do the same this week. And you're going to find that the majority of my picks this week are going to be underdogs, which is what I really focus on, and why I like to call this the Bad Iron Podcast. I love the underdog. Despite the bad luck, we definitely had a couple of bad beats last week that we'll get into later in a different podcast. But let's go on to the Saturday games in college football. One of the big games to me is LSU at South Carolina. Now, I'm an SEC guy. I'm a Kentucky guy, as you can see. And by the way, the Chiefs covered the spread last week against Baltimore. We had that one as well as Philadelphia. But I think South Carolina's game against Kentucky, which I watched every play more than once. South Carolina is not as good as that result seemed, and I think there's been a little bit of an overreaction to South Carolina destroying Kentucky, and a little overreaction to LSU losing at home to USC. So I'm gonna take this is my one of my few favorites, my own one of two favorites I'm gonna take this weekend. LSU -6 at South Carolina. South Carolina home field advantage is great when it's at night. This is a day game. They're coming off a game against Kentucky, which they had circled on their schedule. Kentucky is considered their rival in the SEC. And so that was the game they really were geared up for. I saw the quarterback play. Kentucky's offensive line was dismal. Now, South Carolina has a great defensive line. We can't argue that. But I think they're going to have trouble scoring against LSU. So give me LSU -6 at South Carolina. I think LSU is the better team. I don't think South Carolina is going to get that big of a home field advantage, being an early game, early in the day. LSU is fired up after losing. Brian Kelly is probably going to talk his Bayou talk when he goes to South Carolina, and they're going to bring home the win. If Fonte was on here, he would probably go South Carolina because he hates Brian Kelly. But I'm going LSU. I think they cover the spread. I think they win 31-21. Let's call it that. Let's see how close I get on that one. Another one that I'm not that fond of, but my gut is speaking to me here, and that's Florida versus Texas A&M. I have said a couple of times that I think Florida is really down. Their coach is 100% on the hot seat. Jeff calls them a dumpster fire. They're at home, which they play unbelievable at home. I don't care if they're bad or good. They play up when they're at home. And they're playing home to Texas A&M, and they're getting 4 points. A&M, new coach, they're still trying to figure themselves out. Lost at home to Notre Dame, who lost last week to Northern Illinois. I do think that was a little bit of a fluke, but maybe not so much. Maybe A&M is not as good as some people think they are. So I am taking Florida at home. I love a home dog, especially in the SEC. Love a home dog. Getting 4 points. We're going Florida versus Texas A&M plus 4. I could see A&M winning the game 24-21. But I think Florida may pull this one out. I don't know. Maybe a shocker. Um, Staying in the SEC, one of the ranked games, I wouldn't normally have picked this game to go through, but BC, Boston College, plus 14 and a half at Missouri. Missouri's favored by over 2 touchdowns. Yeah, they've destroyed two terrible teams so far at home. Haven't allowed a point, Missouri. Uh, Boston College has beaten Florida State, who has proven to not be what we thought they were going to be. So I did have Florida State beating Boston College, and Boston College pretty much handed it to them. Boston College is for real. And I'm sorry, Missouri at home, not a big home field advantage. Again, it's not going to be a major crowd. This is not a game they're going to get up for. It's a non-conference game. Boston College, something to prove. Missouri, top 10 ranked team. Boston College, I think, is coming in at 24 ranked, getting 2 touchdowns. Give it to me all day. Giving me a ranked team getting 2 touchdowns against another ranked team all day. I'll take it all day, especially when the home team does not have a big home field advantage. So Missouri may win this game. They may win it by 10 comfortably, but Boston College, to me, is going to cover this 14 and a half at Missouri. Going to go to the Pitt versus West Virginia game. And I'm typically a West Virginia guy. I like Neil Brown. I think he's a really good coach. I think he's an even better offensive coordinator. I think he's got a future if he wants to go back to offensive coordinator job at a really high level school. He's done okay at West Virginia. West Virginia really is great at home. They did not do well in their first game. Pitt is getting 3 at home. Again, a home underdog. Pitt's getting 3 at home versus West Virginia. West Virginia is a great team. They really are. And I hate the ACC. I really do. And I think the ACC is overrated. But I love home underdogs, especially in week 2, 3, and 4 of the season, and especially for teams that are getting ready to go into conference play, and looking ahead maybe to other teams. So give me Pitt plus 3. I wish it was 3.5, and I'm going to probably wait till Saturday to see if it goes to 3.5. I do not want it to go to 2.5. If it goes to 2.5, I'm not touching it. But give me Pitt plus 3 versus West Virginia, and I think they may win this one outright. Tulane at Oklahoma is my next pick. And there's several things that I like about this one. If Fonte was on here, I don't know what he would say. I'd love to hear his opinion on this because he really knows Oklahoma very well. I mentioned Tulane earlier, playing Kansas State. They really could have won that game. They really had a chance on the road at Kansas State to win that game. Tulane, very well coached. I'm not going to mention the coach's name. I think he might be the next coach at Kentucky. I'm just saying, but he can coach. And they've had, 2 really good wins. Maybe his name starts with S. I'm just saying. They've had 2 really good wins. I'm sorry, 2 really good games, 2 really good performances at Kansas State in a tough environment where they really could have won that game. They're getting 14 at Oklahoma. I understand. Oklahoma has a really good home field advantage typically. They play well at home. They can score a lot of points. I understand. I think this is a high scoring game. I don't know the over under. I don't like to bet over unders very often. I do have one coming up later, but I'm taking Tulane getting 2 touchdowns at Oklahoma. Like I said, again, Oklahoma may win this game, but I think Tulane is good enough to keep it close. Oklahoma has, guess who? Tennessee next week in their first SEC game against a top 10 team. They might be looking ahead a little bit. We're at home. We're comfortable. We got Tennessee next week. Big opportunity. Maybe we'll sleepwalk a little bit. Tulane coming off a big opportunity at Kansas State. Where if Tulane would have won, I may have thought differently. I may have thought, oh, Tulane will bounce off of this big win, but they didn't win. So I think Tulane has really is really going to show up, give Oklahoma a game. So I got Tulane plus 14 at Oklahoma. Notre Dame versus Purdue. I bet in both Notre Dame games and won both of them, given here on the Bad Iron podcast. I've not, Purdue's only played one game, which is really weird in college football that teams have buys this early in the season, but that's neither here nor there. The thing to me, I said earlier, I don't like over-unders, but I love the under in this game. Notre Dame wants to grind it out. They're going to play out, and their defense is really good. Yes, they lost last weekend to Northern Illinois. Don't know what happened there. I don't care about the win-loss, but both teams could barely score. This 48 is the over-under. These teams are not going to light up the scoreboard. Give me the under. I don't know what the weather's supposed to be, but there's this hurricane that's kind of going through Indiana, so it might be a little windy. Doesn't matter. I love the under in this game. I think both teams are going to struggle to score. I see a 20-17 type of game here. I don't know who wins. I think Notre Dame's favored, but I'm not going to touch the line. I'm just taking the under because I think both teams are going to struggle to score. Purdue, Notre Dame, under 48. Old Dominion, Virginia Tech. This is a game Fonte would laugh at me at. Why are you betting this game? Well, everybody's been saying Virginia Tech's going to be great this year. They got everybody back. That doesn't mean anything anymore. It's the portal era. It doesn't matter if you have everybody back. Actually, it probably matters more if you pulled in more people from the portal because presumably they're better than who you had on your team before. If you sucked the year before and they're all back, well, wouldn't you suck again unless they get a lot better? Regardless, doesn't matter. I like Old Dominion covering the 16.5 against Virginia Tech here. I think, again, South Carolina, Old Dominion game. Old Dominion had the game won. I don't care who you are, SEC team. I said earlier, South Carolina is not as good as they showed against Kentucky, but they're better than they have showed against Old Dominion. Old Dominion really had that game won if they didn't turn the ball over twice late in the game. So I think they can keep it close. I do think Virginia Tech probably ekes out the win, but Old Dominion is going to cover this game. And if you can get it at 17, take it. That's a lot of points to give a good Old Dominion team. The public sees Old Dominion and is like, what the hell is Old Dominion? And honestly, you ask me, and I've followed sports for 50 years, almost 50 years. I don't know what the hell Old Dominion is. I know what a Dominion is, and I know what old is. I'm old. Well, I have no idea what Old Dominion is, but I have watched a lot of both of their games over the past several years. They can compete. They're better than advertised. This is not a line that has shifted towards one team or the other, so I don't think there's any bias there. But I love getting 17 points if you can. I'll even take 16 against Virginia Tech there. Next up is huge rivalry game that thankfully did not go away this year. I don't really know if it's going away in the future years. Oregon State versus Oregon. My wife was supposed to be on this podcast and said she decided to take a nap. So she's sleepy today. She took today off. She had a well-deserved day off. It's been cloudy and rainy. So she took the day off today because she would have an opinion here. But Oregon has struggled in the first 2 games. Oregon State has a lot of talent. Oregon State's at home. I've been preaching this whole podcast. Oregon State's at home as a 17-point underdog. Oregon has not performed up to expectations, but they're rebuilding in a lot of areas. Yes, they have a crap ton of talent. They have a lot of talent, but that doesn't mean everything. Look at Kentucky basketball. They've had a ton of talent the last 5 years under Calipari, and out in the first round every year. That's not everything. You got to be able to bring it together. So far, they haven't. I don't think they're going to be able to turn it around in 1 week. I do, I feel like Oregon might win this game, but I think Oregon State at home against Oregon in a rivalry game getting 17 points. Give me a home dog in a rivalry game all day. Oregon State plus 17 all day at home versus Oregon. I'm rooting for Oregon because my wife will be happy if they win, but I hope they win 38-31. Maybe that's going to be the final score. We'll see. Love Oregon State plus 17. This is the next one is another SEC game. I'm not so sure about this one, so don't take this one to the bank. But I'm throwing it on here because ever since the line came out, I had a feeling. Alabama at Wisconsin. Wisconsin's again home dog getting 17 points against Alabama. Alabama's really good. They struggled last week, but they always struggle against the weaker teams. But that was Saban, so I don't know what really is going on here. That's my dog, Kaya. She likes to express her opinion. I guess she likes Wisconsin. She likes Badgers, as does my wife, loves the Badger. But that's not why I'm picking Wisconsin here. I think Wisconsin has a really good defense. Now, Milroe for Alabama is unbelievable. Um, and we'll see if he's going to be unbelievable in the NFL because he'll get drafted. Um, and he is fun to watch. And Alabama will put up points. They may put up field goals. I think Wisconsin can bend, not break in this game and keep it close. And Wisconsin, great home field advantage. This is another chance for the Big Ten to show they're part of the big game with the SEC. Alabama may win it, but I love Wisconsin as a 17-point home dog. Give me Wisconsin plus 17. Next one, another big dog in Tulsa at Oklahoma State. You've heard Fonte. If you listen to this podcast at all, my buddy Fonte talked about Oklahoma State. They've struggled so far this year. Tulsa's a strong team. I'm not going to go deep on this one. I just love the number at plus 19. I don't think Oklahoma State is that good. I think Tulsa is another team that has enough talent to really stay with some of the mid-level Power 5 teams, which that's what Oklahoma State is to me. They're not a top-level Power 5 team. They have not proven it this year. Um, I, you know, I don't know what Gundy's going to say about it, but if, go Google his hair. And if you like it, then don't bet this, but you're probably not going to like it. He's got a new hairdo. Hopefully he still has it. Regardless, give me Tulsa plus 19. This is not one of my favorite ones either. So the last two are not two of my favorites, but I just love the number. I love getting that many points, and I think this is going to be an underdog weekend. I think there's going to be more close games than people think. So we're going to continue on here. I'm just going to quickly say for my best bud Fonte, who's normally on here with me, I talked to him earlier about the Air Force at Baylor game, and I do agree with him on this. Baylor really, we both picked against Baylor at Utah last week, and we did not win that one, but Utah's quarterback went out early. Utah had a huge lead in the first quarter and was cruising to win that game. And Cam Rising went down, as he always does, it seems like. And Baylor hung in there, still lost the game, but covered the spread. So there's a little bit of false information there, in my opinion. But I do think Baylor fought hard, and Baylor's better than they've been in previous years. And Air Force is not the typical Air Force they've been. Yeah, they have a tough offense. They are struggling to put up points. I don't think they've achieved more than 7 points in a game in their first two games. So if they only put up 7 to 10 points, Baylor's going to put up points in this game pretty regularly. I like Baylor minus 16. This is my favorite that I'm picking. LSU and Baylor are my only two favorites. And Fonte is also in agreement with me on this one, the Baylor Bears to cover the 16 actually versus Air Force at home. We're going to move on to my favorite team, Kentucky. I'm going to put them in this podcast every week, put the Chiefs in this podcast every week, but not today. We'll have NFL picks tomorrow. Kentucky just pooped the bed against South Carolina. I put on this podcast that I liked the under, and that did hit because I thought it was going to be a game that Kentucky and South Carolina would struggle to score, and both offenses sucked, just as predicted. The only way South Carolina got to 31 was because of a pick six and a 4th-and-1 attempt that Kentucky went for on their own 30 and didn't make it. A few other things. It was not offensive based. South Carolina does not have a good offense. They have a really great defensive line, and they have an amazing defensive end that's 18 years old. That's going to disrupt every SEC offense this year. He is absolutely incredible to watch. I don't know his name. I'm sorry. I don't know all the names of all the players, but check him out. He's a stud. Um, so that being said, Kentucky, Georgia is where we are. Obviously, Georgia is the best, probably the best team in the nation. Earlier on in this podcast, I predicted Georgia to only lose one game at Texas and go on to the Final Four of the playoff and win the national championship. I do believe they're going to do that. I think at Texas is a tough ask, but they're going to get them in the SEC championship. Georgia has talent and experience at every position. It's that simple. Even if they have players out, it doesn't matter. However, and Kentucky sucked. They scored 6 points. They couldn't block a thing of cheese. That's a terrible analogy. I could not come up with a good analogy. They couldn't block me. I am, an old man, well beyond anyway, you all know who I am. They couldn't block anybody. And the South Carolina defense looked amazing. However, there was more to this game than meets the eye. And I'm not going to go into all those details. Kentucky, historically under Stoops, has come back strong after crappy performances for the most part. They're terrible after a bye. When Kentucky has a bye, we're going to bet against them the next week. I don't know why that is, because teams normally should be better after a bye. When the Chiefs are after a bye under Andy Reid, we're betting on the Chiefs every time. Regardless, I think Kentucky's going to muck this up and keep it relatively close. It's going to be somewhat low scoring. I'm not touching the over under, but Kentucky's getting 24 points at home against Georgia. There's some overreaction here to the Kentucky South Carolina game. Yes, they stunk it up and lost 31-6, but they have more talent than they showed in that game. Now, if they come out and poop the bed again, that's on me. And that just means that Stoops has lost the team. I don't think he has. I think they come out fighting. I think Kentucky comes out fighting. And if there's a prop bet that there's a fight in the first quarter, I'm taking that prop bet. This is the way a Stoops team would normally come back and fight. And I mean that literally. They're going to pick a fight sometime in the first half, first quarter. They're going to say, hey, we're not here to lay down. And I think they're going to not give Georgia a game necessarily, but they're going to keep it within 24 points. And I'm definitely going to look at that first quarter line, whatever that first quarter line is. I'm going to look at Kentucky there because I think Kentucky has a really good defense and can slow that Georgia offense down and hold Georgia in the 20s. And if they hold Georgia in the 20s and they get a touchdown or a field goal here or there, they're going to cover the 24 points. And I think that first quarter is going to be clock ticking fast the Stoops way. He's like, we're going back to the Stoops way. We're going to run that clock. We're going to let our defense rest. We're going to run the ball, churn out some first downs. I'm taking the under in that. I'm taking Kentucky in the game. And if it's more than 7 points in the first quarter, I'm taking Kentucky there too. Give me Kentucky plus 24 against Georgia at home. Moving on, we got 2 more to go. Colorado State versus Colorado. All day Colorado State plus 7.5. Deion, dumpster fire. That program in Colorado is a dumpster fire. He's gone as soon as Shedeur. Shedeur may leave in the second quarter and go and say, I'm declaring for the NFL draft. I'm not playing anymore. You never know what's going to happen with this team. You never know. But what I do know is they only have a couple players. They have 3 players. That's it. And that's not enough. This is a rivalry game. Colorado State at home, getting 7.5, getting more than a touchdown. Colorado State all day plus 7.5 at home versus Colorado. Book it, Deion. You're going to coach Dallas Cowboys. You're going to go to the SEC. Come on, give me a break. I love Deion. I have a Deion jersey when he was with the Redskins. Yes, the Redskins, not the Commanders. I have Indian heritage. I can say that. I love Deion when he played. I don't like him anymore. We all know why. They may lose this game outright. Colorado State may win this game outright. And if that's the case, this whole thing may fall apart for Colorado. Last game is one I don't really love, and I hate to end on one I don't really love. But TCU is giving 2 points to Central Florida at home. I don't care who's in or out in this game. I think TCU has a great home field advantage. Yeah, Central Florida's great. They've been great in the past few years. TCU's only having to give up 2 points at home. That means that Vegas thinks this is basically a pick 'em game, but I think TCU's the better team, has more athletes, has more talent on the field. Give me TCU -2. It's been great going through these games with you guys. I hope some of you are listening and some of you are winning some of these. Maybe nobody's listening. I don't know. I'm just doing this for fun because I like doing it. And sometimes I like just talking into a microphone that sounds really cool in my ears with the Chiefs logo behind me. Sometimes that's just pretty fun. I'm probably going to integrate some other things besides just betting into this. I got two wonderful dogs. We're going to have some videos of them at some point. If my wife wasn't napping, she would have been on here and we might have had some other funny things that we were going to talk about. But, I kept this one a lot quicker, a lot shorter, more succinct, so you can just get my picks so I can get them out there. Because I do think we're about to really get hot with the Bad Iron podcast. We'll talk to you soon. Love you guys.